What's going on here? This is Devin from Anyone Outdoors, and today I'd kind of like to revisit the Plow-Point shelter and how to pitch it out where you get a good 45-degree slope on the ridge line. So stay tuned. All right, to set this up, I'm actually starting out with the tarp set up square to the tree. That's going to be our attaching point there. So one thing to keep in mind about square tarps is that this is a 3 meter by 3 meter tarp, but from like that corner to that corner is actually 4.2 meters. So based on some calculations that I'm not going to get into here, we actually need the plow point width set to, believe it or not, roughly about 3 meters. So what I'm going to wind up doing is turning this tarp around in diamond formation. And as you can see here with these orange stakes, they're not staked to the tarp, they're just pointing to where the wings of the plow point will be set. That's where the wings are going to go. Okay, so now we have our tarp shelter, again by DD Hammocks. It's now staked out in what will become the 45-degree plow point. And I've left my orange stake indicators exactly where they were, just to remind you that this is where the wings are going to be staked out. And again, the spacing between this orange stake and the one on the far side is essentially the same width as the tarp square to the tree here. So now we're going to tether it to the tree and make some adjustments. The problem with this tree here is that it's really going to be too low for me to get a true 45-degree angle, but we'll get it as high as we can and then readjust our wings. All right, so the first thing that we'll notice is that the peak, or I guess the tip that's tethered to the tree, it's going to be about 2.1 meters off the ground. Okay, that's where you're going to land. Now this is not exactly 45 degrees, it's very close to 45 degrees. Again, because of the topography here of the landscape that I have to work with, we're still a little lower than I would like to be, but it's still just a little over my head. All right, so we have our plow point pitched out as close to 45 as we can here. And I'll just remind you guys that from wingtip to wingtip, it's going to be about 3 meters. So about the width of the tarp square to the tree. And what you can do is stake out these two wingtips first, then pull your rear tip taut, and that will automatically give you a pitch that's very close to 45 degrees. And the wind's really beating this thing up today, but it's hanging in there. Now, one thing I'll say here is that there seems to be a trend, maybe I'm misinterpreting this a little bit, but there seems to be a trend in pitching the plow point a little too low, at too low of a slope angle. And in doing so, you really lose the benefit of having the space that a good 3 meter by 3 meter square tarp really can afford you. And that's really all I'll say about that. I mean, I get the idea about wind deflection and that kind of thing, but you need a little bit of room here. Okay, so I'm under here now. Again, the tarp is sort of ballooning out because of the wind. This thing is really not pitched correctly in regards to the wind, but for the sake of the video, this is how it's going to have to be based on how high I had to pitch the front of the tarp up. One thing to keep in mind, and I'll just sort of wrap up the video on this point here, is that you don't always need to be involved in an overnight camping situation to justify putting up some kind of a windbreak shelter. The way the space is laid out in here, this would be a very good working area if I wanted to go back out into the woods just for scouting. Maybe I'm gathering hardwoods or something like that. Like for one thing, I still need to make a maul. I need to find a good piece of maple or hickory or something like that. I still need to fabricate a maul for light hatchet work. So I might be out in the woods trying to source hardwoods. I might be out scouting around for long, slender poles for lashing bipods and tripods or something like that. Maybe I'm looking for shorter poles for lashing. Maybe I need to put together some kind of another platform for maybe another sharpening project. I might, make something to lay an axe down on if I wanted to bring a sharpening puck out into the field and just, tune up my axe a little bit. So there's lots of reasons to put up a shelter, especially a quick shelter like a Plow-Point, even for day scouting. So, you don't have to be preparing for, the apocalypse. You don't necessarily even have to be involved in a full-blown camping trip here. Putting up a quick shelter, is very, very practical, even if you want to get out and do some other type of woodcraft type of work. And whenever I say woodcraft, I don't necessarily mean woodworking. I mean woodcraft, fieldcraft, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes you just need a working space that's a little more protected from the environment. Especially if you want to do a little cook or something like that, just a quick cook. Maybe you want to make some tea or coffee. Maybe you want to throw on some instant oatmeal or something like that, and you just don't want all your food kit being blown all over the place. So lots of good reasons to put up a quick shelter, and I think the Plow-Point is probably hands down the best as far as your day scouting shelter configuration goes. But again, I tend to like the pitch of around 45 degrees or as close to 45 as I can get. I'm also looking at a heavy-duty water-resistant canvas tarp from Tractor Supply Company. It's not waterproof, it's water-resistant. It's 7 feet by 7 feet, and I think for day scouting that canvas tarp may be a little more practical. It would definitely be much heavier than the DD tarp, but if I'm not packing a lot of gear into the woods, like maybe I'm just carrying a saw or a hatchet or something like that, or maybe the maul that I still need to make, maybe a smaller shelter would still make sense, and it would still have some water resistance. But especially if you have a water resistant material like some kind of weather treated canvas that's not 100% waterproof, you definitely want to pitch those at least 45 degrees. You really can't go much higher than 45 degrees or else the wingtips may give you issues reaching all the way to the ground. But 45 degrees is a good number for your shelter pitch. And I would say that despite the trend at lower pitched Plow-Points in particular, I really enjoy working in the higher pitched configuration. But that's a wrap for today, and we'll see you next time.